Welcome into the Odds and Audibles podcast. Matt Perry, Merrick Scope, and Jared Mack on the show. Post game edition between the Oregon Ducks, Eastern Washington Eagles. Ducks win 70-14. I don't think this was the outcome. I don't think any of us kind of expected. I mean, not necessarily this many points, but certainly an impressive blowout from a statistical standpoint. Oregon scored touchdowns on its first 10 drives of the football game. They allowed just 187 total yards of offense. That's the first time they've held an opponent under 200 yards since Washington State in November of 2021. Eastern, I think all three of us kind of thought maybe Eastern would throw the ball well. They had 87 passing yards, which is the lowest number a Washington defense allowed since Wyoming of 2017. I tweeted it out, but these games, guys, kind of when this outcome happens, you get some wonky stats like 7 Ducks scored touchdowns, 40 first downs for Oregon in this game. Just some silly stuff from a statistical standpoint.
By the way, Josh Allen was the quarterback for Wyoming that year when they had like 45 yards passing. It was quite the bizarre outcome. Yeah, no, I mean we all picked Oregon to win. We all picked pretty similar scores, I want to say. Like I think we all had Oregon winning by like 25 to 35 points, something like that. And this game was never that competitive, which is a credit to the play. I mean, like I thought it was impressive that from just like an outcomes perspective, the whole first half basically went best case scenario. I mean, every single drive offensively was a touchdown. Eastern Washington didn't get a first down until their 5th drive of the game. And then that led to a touchdown. And honestly, like, I think a little of that assist goes to the Eastern Washington special teams or Oregon's lack of like just a poor coverage on a special teams play where a guy cuts back and he almost houses one. And then it's compounded by a targeting call, which I didn't love, but I understand based on the letter of the law. But, like that felt like, honestly, that was a minor little momentum shift. Not that it really mattered because Oregon came back right after that and scored 2 touchdowns, including another to close out the half on the final play. Bo Nix, we have to talk good Bo Nix because we've seen bad Bo Nix. Now we've seen really good Bo Nix. This is the first time an Oregon quarterback has had 5 touchdown passes in a game since Justin Herbert. Almost perfect from a statistical perspective, like 28 for 33. 277
started the game
yards.
10 for 10.
Yeah, I mean, it was really accurate. I know it's just funny throughout the game because there was a thread on the site complaining about his one bad pass, which ended up being a touchdown for Ferguson. It was a second touchdown catch, but they were saying like, "Oh man, like that was a terrible throw," and people were just ragging on Bo. I'm kind of going like, you're kind of just like going after a guy who's almost throwing a perfect game right now. I mean, right. And I understand it's Eastern Washington, so I don't want to build it up too much, but I thought he was pretty spectacular. I mean, all things considered, I mean, you can't ask for much more at quarterback. And then Ty came in and was also great. So I think you felt really good about a lot of the things we were concerned about going in. We talked about defense needed to tackle in space. I don't know how many missed tackles there were. Didn't feel like a lot. And then they need to finish drives and force turnovers. They did a good job with that. Forced 2 turnovers. The offense went and we said they have to finish drives, and they did that their first 9 times with the football. 9 times down, score touchdowns. And Bo Nix, we say the quarterback play has to be better. And it was. So, I mean, I think just across the board, you feel like all the things you were concerned about, they addressed. Now you got to see what it looks like against a non-FCS opponent, because ultimately that's kind of the way you're going to measure this is, hey, that was really good against Eastern Washington. But BYU, who, by the way, just beat number 9 Baylor, is not Eastern Washington. And there's going to be all sorts of challenges there. And then the team they play the following week, Washington State, they just upset Wisconsin, who was ranked 19th. So the 2
on the road.
So the 2 teams Oregon plays the next 2 weeks just beat top 20 teams so these games are going to be challenging. They're going to be difficult, but I think you certainly feel good about coming out of a game like this. This is like the best possible outcome, honestly, where there aren't, as far as I can tell, not any serious injuries. Team played pretty well across the board, and you came away winning by a lot of points in front of your fans.
Yeah, this was, like Eric just mentioned, this was as good an outcome as I think that could have happened. Obviously, it only matters against teams that aren't FCS level. because usually you're going to win unless you're Washington and Montana last season. But this was as good as it was going to be. I think we all were in the majority here where we thought that rushing attack was going to be the primary means of offensive explosion plays. Bo Nix, like Eric mentioned, 28 of 33, 277 yards, 5 touchdowns, a long of 39 yards. Oregon really didn't take that many shots down the field, but that was fine. He found a lot of connections over the middle of the field, which I think is honestly what I would probably rather see is him making good decisions over the middle of the field, finding Dante Thornton, Troy Franklin, Chase Cota, you name the guy, a running back out of the flats. I thought they moved the ball all over the place. They got it out of Bo's hands. And they might just be making it a first read system. But Dan, mentioned post game that he saw some pre-snap stuff from all 3 of his quarterbacks. He specifically mentioned Ty Thompson, but it was about all 3 of them. And he was great. And the running back by committee, another very good performance from all the running backs. I have all the stats right here. Marquise Irving, 9.2 yards per carry. Sean Dollars was 6.4. Byron Cardwell was 6.9. Noah Whittington was 3.6, which is the lowest of the group. But again, still 263 net yards on the ground. Still really good. They got over 600 yards of offense on the game, 604 to be specific, 40 first downs. The offense was just cruising. And, the last couple of years when Oregon has played a team where they probably should have blown them out, it's been a little closer than expected. This is the first time I feel like since Nevada in 2019 where Oregon has just blown them out where there were no questions asked. This was an absolute butt kicking for a PG version of the word. And I think that's the first time really I've felt since the Nevada game a couple of years ago where there's a 50-point difference between the 2 teams. And there should have been a 50-point difference between the 2 teams in this game. This should not have been a 3 or 4 score game. This should have been, a 6 or 7 score game. And, Oregon's defense, at least the starters, it seemed like they were much better tackling wise. There's no real stats for missed tackles. I know that the Pac-12 broadcast said that Oregon missed, 29 tackles against Georgia. That's a lot. There's no stats on that right now, but it seemed like there were a lot of hats to the ball, a lot of gang tackling. When the second team was in, there were some maybe not so great moments tackling, but overall turnovers were forced. Defensive touchdowns were scored. I thought it was just a pretty close to perfect all-around game for Oregon. It's exactly what they needed after a game against Georgia.
Oregon was 10 of 14 on third down. 3 of those conversions were touchdowns. Their average yard to gain was about 10 yards, which was pretty interesting. I don't know if that will grade out very well. And that's where I think if you talk to the players, a lot of them said it. If you listen to Dan Lanning's press conference or read the transcript that Jared got up on Duck Territory, he quickly pointed out that there's still a lot of room for this team to improve and a lot of room for this team to grow. And that's an area because in that first drive, there were a couple of situations that some stuff happened in the offense that just made their drive a little bit harder than it needed to be. There was the illegal snap by Alex Forsyth, which was on a 3rd and 4, and Oregon got 9 yards on third down, and they ended up going for it, which I liked to see, and they got the first down. We should know they went for on 4th down twice, and they got it both times. And then
Matt, can we talk about how they got it the first time? They went under center with a quarterback sneak. Jerry Thompson must have been going crazy.
Passed out on the sideline.
Yeah, wherever Jerry Thompson was, I'm sure he was just elated, hands in the air, celebrating.
Maybe we can get some in-depth breakdowns of that play. Maybe that can be Jared's film review of all angles of the QB sneak.
Hey, I can do it. You ask, I can do it.
I also joked the second time around. I loved this decision. It was 4th and 5, I think, at Eastern's 40, and they went for it. And Mario Cristobal would have punted that football and would have played it safe. And I don't know if Dan makes that decision the previous week against Georgia, or maybe next week against BYU. But today he made that decision, and I liked it. I loved it. And there were some things that, from a coaching standpoint, you liked in this game, but overall, this is, I think Jared said it, like, this is a game where you have to obliterate, and that's what I wrote in my story. Like, for everyone to feel good, you have to obliterate your opponent in this type of a situation. You have to hang 70, and that's so hard to do. And somehow this team was able to bounce back. And I think it's the biggest thing for me is the confidence this is going to give the team. I mean, they needed it. They're human. I mean, you play like you did against Georgia last week, even though they're defending national champions, probably notched them down a little bit in their confidence meters. And this probably hopefully I would think gets them back up there, which Bo Nick said it did.
And I think confidence for the players. How about confidence for the coaches? I mean, and I don't want to say that they wavered, but in Dan's first game, you lose 49-3 with the new staff, a lot of guys in new spots. The whole week is basically spent just tearing apart everything about this team. I mean, there's almost nothing positive to talk about after that game, and so a lot of it fell on the coaches' shoulders, a lot fell on the players' shoulders, and I'm sure they were hearing it as you would expect. So confidence there, and then probably doesn't mean quite as much, but I think it was important for the fans for this game to be the way it went down. Certainly, we talked about on Friday from a work environment for us, running the largest Oregon football message board. I'm thrilled that there's going to at least be some contingent of fans that are feeling good about things. I mean, we already see some griping about other things, but there's a certain percentage that are just always going to be complaining. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's I think there's going to be confidence throughout the fan base now, a little bit more going into BYU. Like if this game was, let's put it this way, the scores we all predicted, if this game was like 48-24, which I think is basically the average of what we all predicted.
Yeah.
I think there'd be people pretty concerned, especially if that 48-24 was like Oregon was up 14 at half and they kind of extended it, and Ty Thompson didn't get in until the last drive, kind of like a Stony Brook-ish kind of thing. I guess.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yeah, and I guess Ty got in earlier that game, but that was because Anthony Brown got hurt and missed the second half. But no, I just think that this was important for everybody's confidence to go out and have a game like this. And I think there's probably not an aspect that I point to that I was really underwhelmed with, or that I really feel like you've got a whole lot of gripes with, and that's a positive. I mean, there's obviously areas to improve upon. Matt discussed a couple of those earlier. On first and second downs early on in the game on run plays, there's just several of them where, they were stopped at the line of scrimmage or a couple of yards behind.
Someone tripped, yeah.
Or two times in the red zone, running backs tripping either over Nix's feet, or I think one of them looked like Bucky Irving tripped over Nix's foot, and then I think the other one was Sean Dollars just like kind of slipped on the turf. Like those kind of things are going to be costly going forward. You have to shore that up. I just thought, like, overall, I don't know how much else I have to say about just like I felt really good about everything. There are probably some players I want to kind of point out as being standouts, but I think we're going to do that in a little bit. So I'll just my point was I think it was important for the players' confidence, the coaches' confidence, and then the fan base's confidence. And everybody that showed up today, I think you have to imagine the high majority of them, those that wanted to go home feeling pretty good, I think went home feeling pretty good. Those that want, go to a game and then want to pick everything apart and feel bad, they're probably going to feel bad regardless of the outcome. But I just didn't think there was that much to complain about.
Yeah, no, I don't have too much to say either. There wasn't a lot to complain about. Dan did mention special teams again, just the 48-yard kickoff return. Just some unnecessary penalties, I would say. I like on Jackson LeDuc. The Bryce Betcher one, I didn't really see that. We didn't really get a replay in the press box, so I'll take your word for it, Eric, at home, who were watching it. There were just like a couple little things. And, there, at the beginning of the game, it seemed like Eastern Washington, they dropped a ball on third down that was an easy slant for a first. They had a weird decision to go for it on third and really, really short and run a screenplay that was just a bad pass. And so to me personally, I was kind of thinking, it's like, all right, well, Oregon's kind of escaping here with these short 3-and-outs for like 2 or 3 times in a row. And then you watch the rest of the game and you realize it's like, no, that's Oregon's just a much better team here. Like those 3 and outs were legit. And, that's kind of why I don't really – there's not a whole lot to go off of in terms of, where do they look to improve upon. And I'm sure, once we all kind of rewatch the tape, we'll find a couple things to look at. But we could jump right into just highlighting guys and their performances.
Yeah. I think you have to credit Bo Nix, 28 of 33, completed his first 10 passes. And I 277 throwing, 5 touchdowns, 85% completion percentage. And I think the greatest thing about it is they didn't really give away much from a downfield passing attack. Eric mentioned it, but I didn't know more than 3 or 4 plays that the ball sailed more than 20 yards down the field.
Oh.
They really didn't push the ball downfield. And I think that's the recipe for Bo Nix to have good games when he's not having to make these long throws and everything's kind of in that intermediate stuff. I really liked Troy Franklin getting 10 targets. He looked really good in that role. And then Dollars, man, I think if we learned anything at the running back position, he is the team's third down running back. I think he was out there almost every single time on third down. And he can help you in so many ways. He had the block on Terrence Ferguson's touchdown catch, which was a big deal. He had 9 carries for 58 yards. And then he also had, on top of that, from a receiving standpoint, 39 yards, had 97 total yards of all-purpose, which led the team. That was one of my picks, so I felt really good about that. But I was 3 off of the 100 yards. Defensively, I think this is hard to get a feel because
so balanced.
It was really balanced, but Talkington was not good in this game. No. He missed some throws that were really bad. And I mean, I think I mentioned it to Eric in the Slack channel while the game was going on. Like, I think we looked at this Eastern game, and it's hard to figure out who they are and watch film and find film of them. And then when you do find a game from like Tennessee State last week, you don't know how good Tennessee State is. The hard idea of figuring out who is who. Eastern is not the Eastern, I think, at least in my eyes, I was envisioning them to be. They were not a good football team. If they win 10 games at the FCS level, to me, that tells you how bad the FCS level is, because even if Oregon's really good, a 10-win playoff caliber team at the FCS level doesn't get destroyed by 56 points.
No, you're right. Talkington was not what I expected he could be. And that's a little disappointing because obviously you want Oregon to win, but I would have been fun to watch Eric Berrier, who was last year's, again, like the best player in FCS, play and see how he would have performed against Oregon. He's a bigger guy, a little more athletic, can throw the ball. I think Talkington, as Jared said, some of those misses, some of the early –
they were bad. They were close, really.
Some of those like 3 and outs. There's 2 of them I can think of where he's got a guy, and the commentators, because for those who I didn't end up going to the game because I'm still sick, which was the first time I missed a game since 2018. So I was watching at home, but it was kind of funny hearing the announcers be like, "Oh, great coverage by Jamal Hill," and you watch it and it's like, nah, if that's a good throw, that's a first down. Like Hill's like totally trailing the play. Not that he played poorly or anything, but they didn't get challenged at quarterback. They went from one of the best quarterbacks in college football to certainly the worst I think they'll face this year. I think that's pretty easy to say. Matt obviously talked about quarterback. Here's a question I just want to pose to each of you. Who do you think Oregon's best running back is now? It's like a really small sample size, but here's the fun part about it. I think there's 4 answers actually it's probably to me 3 answers, because I think my guy Noah has probably been the least impressive through 2 games, but he's not been bad by any means. But Irving probably had, to me, the best single run of the day, that run off of the left tackle up the field. Yeah. He's got a lot of wiggle to him.
He does.
I think he's awesome. I did mention to Jared. Jared was talking about how he was going to be like your third down back. Well, he has also dropped 3 passes in 2 games. Not been great.
We don't talk about that.
We won't talk about that anymore. Dollars, I agree with Matt. I think on third down is just money. I think he's great there. And then I think Cardwell, I still really love the way he runs. You get him in the right situation where if because he's got great vision and I think he has a great feel for kind of how to find the right place to get to. I thought there were some really special runs from him today, and of course, both touchdowns were like those are basically play dependent. Like I think any of the running backs would have scored there walking in because he didn't really have any difficulty. They were basically well executed plays where he's the beneficiary of a well crafted play by Dillingham and a well blocked play by his tight ends, his offensive line tight ends. I think Seven McGee was crucial on the first one, if I recall. That was the run or the pass. I think he's great. So I mean, that's the thing that's kind of interesting is like I think all three of those guys have had major moments through 2 weeks, and I think Whittington he had some decent plays as well. I think he was probably just to me had the fewest impressive plays as Jared. So I think he had 3.6 yards per carry. Wasn't his best day, but
8 for 40.
Not bad. I mean,
no,
that's not bad. And so, I think you just look at this group and you go, I know there's a lot of people going like, God, I just want to run one or two guys. I think it's actually not a bad thing at all to have four guys that you feel like you can rely on. I think as the season goes on and you get into games that are a little bit more competitive and you kind of get a hot hand, you'll see more of, hey, Byron is having an awesome day. Let's just go with him and he'll have 15 carries. Or, hey, Sean's been so productive on third down. Let's give him a little bigger role on first and second. But I love what we've seen out of the running backs. I thought it was a great day from the running backs. They did not hit my 300 yards rushing, unfortunately. 200.
It was close.
Yeah, you were close.
263, I think it got to. Yeah. And we should also note they did use a fifth running back, and it wasn't the one we expected.
No, Kilo
from Hilo came through and had. Honestly, I already said Irving had the best run, but I think the best touchdown run of the day.
Yes.
Was
very impressive.
His little kind of spin in the hole over the defensive lineman or linebacker whoever had penetration, and then that leap. That was impressive, man. That was not normal walk-on running back stuff.
We should kind of clarify. He did play at Hawaii, so
on
it's not like it's not like he's a pretty good walk-on, all things considered.
He's the Donovan Dalton of Oregon offensive walk-on.
Yes.
Who's also a Hawaii scholarship player who's now here as a walk-on. So, so they have 5 running backs who had played today. They have a 6th in Jordan James, who's interesting. They didn't play him, but that's 6 legit guys, and that's a really good situation to be in where, again, knock on all the wood and all of our living spaces. But if a guy goes down, 2 guys go down, you've got options. And I think you feel really good about that. Matt took the Troy Franklin part, but I just wanted to say I thought it was really notable that on third downs and then on a crucial fourth down to extend a drive, they went to basically the exact same situation, which was a Troy Franklin on basically a comeback route or a curl, where he's just so quick and so smooth out of his breaks that he just turns around. And I'm not sure how effective that's going to be in against better competition because I think in man coverage he was just roasting that guy. And that guy might have even been a soft zone, which is why they took advantage of it. But if a guy can't cover Troy, he's going to win those battles. And I thought he was really effective with, 10 catches, 84 yards isn't going to blow you away. But a lot of those are big catches. So I thought Troy and he was my pick going into the season to lead the team in receiving yards. I thought he I don't want to say cemented anything because it's 2 weeks in, but I think through 2 weeks, you feel like he and Bo have a pretty good connection. Bo has some confidence that if the ball goes there, good things happen, and I thought he really stood out offensive. I think the entire offensive line. How about Marcus Harper? That's a name we haven't mentioned all day. Got the start over Ryan Walker, who didn't play. There were some plays where he was really productive. I was actually about to send a tweet about something, and then I think a touchdown happened the next play, so I didn't get to send it. But he had a clear out block on I think it was on a Sean Dollars run play that kind of set him up for about a 10 to 15 yard run, and it was him pulling. And he just took a guy out. I thought he performed really well for his first start. So offensively, a lot of game balls, a lot of guys you feel really good about. And then defensively, Matt did a good job of breaking down the talking part. But the point I was going to make was the balance was what was it? 5 guys had 3 tackles, so nobody had anything more than that. My Bennett Williams 9 tackles fell very short. He had 2. It's kind of hard to highlight a guy that stood out. DJ Johnson and Keith Brown both had sacks. They both had 3 tackles. So those are probably your 2 quote unquote standouts. But again, 3 tackles isn't going to blow anybody out of the water here. And I was trying to look and see if there's any true freshmen that had big stats, but the answer is no.
No.
Jaleel Florence, Jaleel Tucker, and Kamari Terrell all had a tackle, and Sir Mills had a pass deflection. And those are the only defensive players that had stats, and none of the offensive freshmen had stats. So not much to highlight there either. So I don't know, Jared. You're going third here. I might have left you scraps.
Yeah, I feel I'm kind of struggling here. I'm going to start with Casey Rogers. Casey Rogers had a good day at the office, had a sack, his first career one as a Duck. I think it was the first of the season for the Ducks too. Am I wrong? It might have been DJ Johnson had it earlier.
Yeah,
DJ Johnson had it earlier.
Okay.
Rogers wasn't credited with a sack, but he was credited with a tackle for loss.
Boo. It's a tackle for loss on the quarterback. So to me, that's a sack.
That's a sack.
Also picked up Triquez Bridges' interception fumble into the end zone that slipped through Mace Funa's hand, which Rogers said afterwards he was very thankful for. He thanked Mace afterwards. I talked to Triquez Bridges too after the game. He was really upset that he did not return that for a pick six.
I would be too, man.
I would be too.
I joked with him because he's like the king of the pick sixes in Alabama. He's got like a million of them in his high school career. He's like, I know that's me. What you saw today, that's not me. So that was funny. Shout out to Triquez Bridges. I guess he's a guy I can talk about with his interception. Christian Gonzalez, another defensive guy, didn't call it, but predicted that he would get an interception. He did. Did not get the tackles, but that's okay. But yeah, the balance on defense was really great. There weren't a lot of exceptional defensive plays. There's a lot of really steady ones. Good penetration by the defensive line at points, making plays just annoying for Eastern Washington. The Eagles never got anything going on the ground. A lot of quick passes, a lot of quick screens, things like that. Nothing that Oregon could really do something with, but they made their tackles. Multiple guys to the ball, hats on the ball, helmets on the ball, whatever you like to say. And I just really liked what I saw from them there. Their defensive communication seemed much better this time around. There are a couple plays where Oregon would line up, and then one of like Brian Addison or Steve Stevens would come down and start yelling out something, and the team would shift or the team would move, and it would actually benefit them, and they'd move to the correct side. So whatever they were seeing was really good. Offensively, I thought Dante Thornton had a quietly good night. Finished the day with 4 receptions for 60 yards. It was really just the Troy Franklin show in terms of wide receivers. I think Chase Cota had a decent day. He was like Bo Nix's early targets. It seems to be like Cota, he had 4 targets, but only 2 receptions. It seems like Cota is kind of like Bo Nix's go-to guy as the game starts. Just like quick, simple routes, something to do. Running back room, Eric, to kind of answer your question, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who the number. Well, I feel like I'm old school, and I would rather have like a solid 1-2 combination with a third guy off the bench. And if I had to pick that right now, I think I would still pick Bucky Irving first. I think he would be my number 1 guy, but I think Sean Dollars is a clear, at the very minimum, is a clear third down guy. But I think he's a lot more talented at that, and he has shown it in these first 2 games. Bucky didn't do well against Georgia, but did really well tonight. 8 carries, 75 yards, 9.2 average. That's really dang good, and a touchdown. Really impressed overall with the running back room, but I think I am old school, and I think I'd rather see like 1 or 2 guys with the third off the bench. So I don't know what they're going to do there because they're all options. Byron Cardwell was good. Noah Whittington probably had the worst day, but he was still effective. If they gave him another 5 or 6 carries, he probably would have had another touchdown and 30, 40 more yards. Kind of stinks going last here. Shout out Camden Lewis. I'm going to give him a shout out because he was very good on kickoffs today. 6 touchbacks.
And I think he was the one who really led to that tackle on the kick return. Because
he did.
He cut that angle off. He went full speed.
He got it. I don't know if he was credited for a tackle. I'll check really quickly, but
I don't think he was.
Oh yes, he was. Total tackles. Camden Lewis. He got one.
There you go.
So shout out special teams. Very surprised that Camden Lewis took the kickoffs. Actually, that was my first note of the game. Well, obviously because it's the first play of the game, but Camden Lewis, kickoff guy. 6 touchbacks. I expected it to be Andrew Boyle or Alex Bales. Nope. Camden Lewis. Only 1 punt. I was on the field and didn't really get to even see it. Trying to think if there's any guy off the top of my head. Maybe there's something in my notes over here, but
We
I think
we
all
gotta
around.
go ahead.
No, you're good. Cam
I was
McCormick.
saying, yeah, that was right. What I was going to point to. You were looking for something.
There you go.
But we got to talk about McCormick A wearing Spencer Webb's uniform. A tight end scores the first touchdown in Autzen Stadium game this season, and McCormick scores a touchdown, the first since 2017, and he even referenced it right where he scored that touchdown too. And he said in 17 that Spencer Webb was, I think, there for a visit or something. And then he was just very emotional coming off the field because he was wearing Spencer's uniform and he scored. And it was the first time he scored a touchdown in 5 years, which is pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That's on
pretty cool to see.
How did we not? How was he? That's bad on us. That should have been like number one on our list of guys standouts. I mean, I thought he had the biggest game, but that was like the most significant touchdown, I think.
Yeah,
with everything that it stood for.
Yeah.
So cool. I mean, straight up, just like the Spencer thing adds obviously a lot to it because those two are really, really close. And that's, I mean, the fact that he was in his number, I mean, all of that is just honestly really powerful in the first game at Autzen Stadium. The fact that the guy wearing his number to commemorate him gets the touchdown, and like that in of itself is awesome. But just the Cam part, I mean, it's been 5 years since he's caught a touchdown. This guy's been working for basically the last 4 years just to be healthy enough to play. And so for him to get out there and I think start the game, I'm pretty sure he was one of the starters.
Yeah, he started.
I mean, just like
he did.
Kudos to him. I mean, what an awesome story. Just and again, the Spencer part's always going to be a part of it, especially today because he was in a jersey. But really awesome just to see Cam go out there. The fact that he's still on the team is amazing, and the fact that he's able to contribute and make plays is awesome too. And I just had one stat on that. This kind of tells you how long ago that touchdown was. Braxton Burmeister was the quarterback who threw that touchdown pass.
God.
Very nice.
Yeah,
that gives a good thing right there.
That was a long freaking time ago. A long time ago. And here's another part. This is just another random thing. Braxton Burmeister, it was against Utah. Braxton Burmeister threw one touchdown. There was another touchdown thrown in the game. I'm going to give you guys each one guess. Do you want to try to guess who threw the other touchdown in that game?
Who threw it?
Yeah, there's two touchdown passes against Oregon beat Utah. Oregon won like 42-21. It was
Charles Nelson.
Ooh, Matt.
That's a good one.
That was impressive. I thought that was going to be a stumper. But that was just another point to be like, these were the guys that were making an impact for this game when Cam caught his last touchdown. The guys that are long gone from the program. And he's still here.
Still got it.
Yeah. Just a quick thing on Cam, just, obviously it's a great story. Very happy for Cam catching his first touchdown pass in 5 years. Dan Lanning talked about it after the game, and it kind of seemed like it was a plan to try to get Cam in the end zone. Dan's quote was, they were talking in the headset, and Kenny said, "Hey, we got an away route here to get Cam the ball and get him in the end zone." So I think this was something that Oregon was trying to do. I don't know if it specifically was like just the emotion of the game or that was the matchup that they wanted, but it worked out and for Cam and for Oregon and to commemorate and have a moment about Spencer Webb and that time and first game back at Autzen was perfect. It was the absolute perfect guy to catch that football at that time. Cam was really emotional after the game, and Dan mentioned after he caught the touchdown that there were tears in his eyes as well. So it's a good scene, just a much needed scene for a big win for a much needed program.
I know we're kind of at that point where we wanted to get off the show, but I wanted to pose this question to wrap things up. 2 games in, I know one of them they only scored 3 points. But just from a pure scheme perspective, the plays that are getting called to get guys open, I love it. And I think it's astronomically better than what we saw from Oregon. I don't want to say this, but since Willie Taggart in 2017, when it felt like pre-Cal first half when Justin Herbert got hurt in that game. They're taking shots. They're being aggressive. They're finding ways to get guys open. And I just love the fact that the offense, even though they were up 49-7 or whatever it was, they kept throwing. They kept being aggressive. And they got younger guys in and they took chances with these guys. And this is what everyone's been clamoring for is Ty Thompson didn't throw a touchdown pass, but it's get in there and let's see what he can do. And they're actually being aggressive with backups, which I love.
Yeah, now to your point, obviously the 2019 season had some games where there was some offensive firepower, but I probably agree you have to go back to 17. And I feel like people, because Willie Taggart left the way he did, and he's done so poorly since, kind of overlooked, like that offense is actually pretty fun in 2017. Like there was some
before Herbert got hurt.
Before Herbert got hurt, and then even kind of, I know the bowl game. I think the bowl game didn't they win like 9? He wasn't coaching it, but that was when Mario took over. I think they won like 9-6 or something like that. But
yes,
so that wasn't a big moment of offensive like firepower. But like they also scored. How many points was it against Oregon State? It was like the record for that Oregon State rivalry.
They had like 42 at halftime. I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like and I wouldn't have to go back and do too much time on Willie Taggart at Oregon, but
you sure?
I just thought like Matt brought it up, and I just wanted to say like I actually think that offense was kind of fun.
69-10.
Yeah, there's a ton of points. They scored a crap load in that game, and the Taggart offense was actually pretty fun. And like there's an alternate world where he's Oregon's coach for a little bit after, and those offenses continued to be really fun with Justin Herbert at quarterback, and could have put up some crazy stats. And Herbert doesn't get hurt, whatever, doesn't matter. But I agree, Matt, in terms of like, especially compared to last year and the COVID year when the quarterback play wasn't great and you had a little bit of, I just think the offense was really safe and they took chances. Yeah. I agree with you, Matt, earlier when you said like, I think it was like 4th and 6 at the 40-yard line. There's no question Mark Cristobal is bringing out the punt unit and they're going to try to pin them at the 1-yard line rather than going for it. I agree with you. I don't know if they do that against better competition, but I appreciate the fact that they stayed aggressive because that's something we haven't seen. And that's also just been historically such a big part of Oregon football. Like Chip Kelly, like one of the things he was known for was being really aggressive on 4th down. It was fun to kind of see that element back. I'll be curious to see what it looks like against BYU, who just played a really great game against Baylor. They won that game, I think, 26-20, and it went to double overtime. So not a lot of points scored there. We'll see what Oregon looks like against a much better defense. I will say, if you average out now the two scores from the two games, Oregon's averaging about 37 points per game. Not too bad.
Pretty good.
Especially when you scored 3 points in the first one.
That's pretty good. Not bad. To bring this full circle and kind of talk about the offense, like, you know, when I said that this is a team that you should blow out and you should blow out handily, and these are games, and then there weren't opportunities like last season or the year before where, you know, it seemed like this should be a blowout game, and all of a sudden it was a 2-score game heading into the fourth quarter, or even a 1-score game like against Arizona or Cal. You know, that has a large part to do with the offense. I still feel like I was just absolutely robbed of Joe Moorhead as an offensive coordinator the past 2 seasons because he did absolutely nothing, and I don't think it was because he didn't know what he was doing. I think it was more so because of Mario Cristobal, you know, kind of taking control of the offense. And frankly, you saw that today against Southern Miss for Miami. There were a lot of people who were unhappy with the play calling on offense, even though they have Josh Gaddis, who's another really great offensive mind. To me, this is what a team looks like when their offensive coordinator has full control. And it's fun, depending on who your offensive coordinator is. If it's Steve Adazio for Colorado State or used to coach for Colorado State, I don't know where he is now. You're just running the ball up the middle. And this is not what a Kenny Dillingham-led or a Dan Lanning-led team is going to do. And it's a lot of fun, like Matt mentioned. There's a lot of plays that Kenny Dillingham tried out tonight. Some of them worked. Some of them didn't. He tried them in all sorts of different downs, first, second, third. The 4th down call was perfect. It was a great route by Troy Franklin, who ran right to the sticks and kind of sat there in his zone. I just really like the offense. They're not afraid to take shots. They didn't even really take any shots tonight, but they still had plenty of plays over 25 yards. And so, some of that is due to Eastern Washington's ability to tackle. That's fine, whatever. But they're still taking the shots. They're not afraid. They're going to throw it on 1st and 2nd down instead of, getting into 3rd and 6, and all of a sudden they have to throw it because their first 2 runs up the middle didn't go far enough. It's very nice seeing something kind of refreshing and back to that 2017 season. And, you can kind of draw parallels to seasons before that as well, but that's the closest one that we've had. And still upset about the Joe Moorhead stuff, but I'm very glad that Kenny Dillingham is running a fun offense at Oregon.
It's going to do it for us here on the Odds and Audibles post-game edition. Send your requests in, or I guess your questions for the Monday podcast, the mailbag, and we'll starting probably later today because it's now Sunday as of this recording, getting you ready for BYU, which upset number 9 Baylor 26-20 in overtime in Provo, setting up a huge non-conference game. And I not to get into another discussion because we won't, but I think that game is going to tell us a lot about where this Oregon football team is at, more so than tonight did. But we've got a lot to talk about until then. So until then, check out duckterritory.com and keep listening to the Odds and Audibles podcast.
Talk to there, folks.
Peace.